Am I going to be charged with murder? The detective sighed and did not answer. His eyes were tired, haunted. Just help us get to the bottom of this, he said. Okay, I answered. I'll do my best. I could hear the tremor in my voice. I hadn't stopped shaking since it happened. I'd had a strong drink to settle my nerves. It hadn't worked. Let's start at the beginning, said the detective. You were having a Halloween party. Yeah, I said. We do it every year. We take turns hosting, and the whole block participates. This year was our turn. So you're the one who set up the decorations? Yeah, I said. Oh God, that sounds bad. But it wasn't just me. It was lots of people. I was mostly just supervising. Can you give me a list of who was involved? Yeah, it was... I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. Just give me a moment to calm down. I can give you the list. That's okay, we can come back to that. Okay. So who was it that set up the scarecrow? It was me, I said. But I didn't... I didn't do that. I set it up the night before. Someone must have come in during the night and... Oh God. The room swayed, and my breath came sharp and fast. My heart ratcheted up its pace to breakneck speed, and darkness began to close in around my vision. Hey, the detective said, just calm down. You're hyperventilating. Take long and calm breaths. I did as he said. My heart slowed, but the panic remained. Thanks, I said. Do you think you can keep going? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just give me a moment. My body convulsed with tremors, but in a few minutes, they had settled down to a mild shaking in my hands. I gulped down a hard knot in my throat. Okay, I said. I'm ready. So the scarecrow, the detective prompted. The word filled me with dread. The scarecrow, I repeated numbly. It's a Halloween tradition. The neighbor said as much. You destroy it every year? Yeah, I said. Usually it's filled with candy and straw, like a piñata. The kids beat it with sticks, and everyone has a good time. I just don't understand. God, why would someone do that? It's too early to speculate, said the detective. Right now we are gathering the facts. When did you notice that something was wrong? Well, right away, I noticed that the scarecrow wasn't coming apart as easily as it should have been, but I just thought that I had put it together too well. So I grabbed a stick and... Yes, I took a swing. The detective leaned forward, and then what happened? My shoulders slumped. My mouth was cottony and dry. And then, I said, the scarecrow began to bleed, and there was a pregnant pause. The detective's eyes bored into mine, willing me to continue. He said nothing, and I had to fill the silence. It fell over, I said. The hat came off, and we saw that it was a body. What happened then? The kids started screaming. One girl started it. The Oakley girl, I think, and then they all went off. We, the other parents and I, we pulled them all away. We called the police and, well, that's it. You know the rest. The detective scribbled his last note and closed the fold-top notebook he'd been writing in. His eyes were hard, dull gray stone, impossible to read. When he spoke again, his words were measured, careful. His voice was soft. What interests me, Mr. Johnson, he said, is that you haven't asked about your wife. The question caught me completely off guard. My wife, I said. She's out of town. Oh God, she's going to freak when she finds out what happened. She hates the block Halloween party enough as it is. Your wife is out of town? Probed the detective. The question poked a fresh wound. Yes, I said, forgetting my fear in an amount of irritation. She and my son are spending the holiday with her parents in Virginia. That seems strange, the detective said. A family spending a holiday apart. I got the feeling he knew something more than he was letting on. Have you talked to her? I said. I'd like to hear your side. My wife and I are going through a rough patch right now, I said, but I don't see why this is relevant. It's our job to gather all the information, he said. Then we can decide what is and what isn't relevant. Why was your wife not spending the holiday with you? I sighed. I wasn't proud of it, but I was getting flustered. I could feel hot blood rising to my face. We separated, I said. Why is that? It's personal. Your wife said that it was related to infidelity. So you have talked to her? Yes. Fine, I said. You know, I cheated on my wife. I destroyed our family. It's all my fault. Now, I've had a hell of a day. So if you don't mind, can you please tell me what the fuck this has to do with anything? The detective paused. He spoke softly. Your wife is in police custody, Mr. Johnson. What? I am so sorry to tell you this, he said. But she had rendered a full confession. A full confession for what? What the hell are you talking about? It happens occasionally in cases of separation, he said. One party feels the need to punish the other. Unfortunately, the children are sometimes used as a tool to that end. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The room swam. Bile rose in my throat. Oh God, I gasped. Oh God, no. I am afraid we have positively identified the remains as belonging to your son, Ben, he said. The scream died in my throat. I blacked out. Some relationships are sustained by nothing more than the fact that at any given moment, it's easier to make up, have intercourse, and go to sleep than to tear your life apart. That's how it was with me and Marla. We met at a bar, hooked up all night, and she never left. And because of her, I'm gonna die. I said she never left, but it's more like she wouldn't leave. I was surprised when I woke up in the morning and she was still there. Usually they skip out on me during the night. I guess I'm not really anyone's idea of Mr. Right, more of a Mr. Right now, and that's only after a lot of drinks. I wrote it off and figured I'd let her sleep in, and she'd be gone when I got home from work that evening. Nope. I got home and there she was, just staring at me like, where have you been? That's when I realized that there was something seriously wrong with her. I ate in silence, and she just stared at me, wide-eyed, unblinking. Her gaze made me feel like there were bugs under my skin. I wanted her gone, but I was too weak to stick up for myself. That night, we wound up hooking up again. When the sun came up, I was still inside her. Reality set in, and I felt disgusted with myself. How could anyone be so weak? I promised I'd make sure she was gone by the time I got back from work the next day. Of course, when I got home that day, she was still there. She was just laying in bed with the TV on, and she smelled like she hadn't showered in 3 days. She didn't even look away from the TV when I came in. I didn't bother asking her to leave. I knew she'd just ignore me. We had one of those relationships where your partner is just a better version of your right hand. We didn't talk. We had no connection. We just hooked up. We just hooked up on the counter, on the bathroom floor, on the dining room table, wherever there was space. Our sexual relationship started getting violent, and that's when I first noticed the puddles. I came home from work one day, and there it was, A puddle right in the middle of the living room floor. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it smelled like rotting pineapple. I was too tired to clean it up. Told Marla she might as well do something to help out. We fought about it, hooked up about it, and then we slept. Same as always. The next day, there was another puddle. Things went on like this for a while. Every day, a new fight, a new hookup, and a new puddle. I started pouring bleach on them and pushing them into the yard with a mop, but the house still reeked. I had nightmares about drowning in a giant puddle that smelled like rotting pineapple. Then it went wrong. One night, when I was inside Marla, I heard her whisper in my ear, "Burn me." "What?" I sputtered out. "Burn me." I fumbled around in my pockets and pulled out my lighter, flicking it on an inch from her skin. "Like this." I looked at her for approval, but she just stared, her wide, black eyes unblinking. "Don't just hurt me," she hissed. "Burn me." I moved the lighter closer and watched her skin begin to melt like wax. "More," she whispered. "More. More." She looked up at the bottle of Everclear on top of the fridge. "Marla, I don't think that—" "More," she screamed at me, and I tumbled off the bed and ran to the fridge to grab the bottle. I poured some on her arm, but spilled way too much on the bed as my hands violently shook. I held the lighter to her skin, flicked it, and shit! I hit the ground as a column of flame shot up and licked the ceiling. Marla just lay there moaning like I never heard her moan before. I ran to the sink and yanked out the miniature fire extinguisher, praying it still worked. I emptied out the whole thing before the fire was finally out. Marla's arm was a mangled mess of scorched bone and melted flesh. "Good job," she whispered. She seemed pretty pleased with me as I climbed weakly back into bed with her. "Daniel," she whispered. "Yes, Marla?" "Burn me more." To tomorrow, I will. Just let me sleep." "Do you promise?" Yes, I promise." But I broke my promise. When I got off work the next day, I went to a hotel. I didn't even want to look at Marla, and I was sure she would be there waiting for me when I got home. It took 2 bottles of whiskey from the minibar for me to start feeling drowsy that night. It wasn't until 3 in the morning that I finally started to drift off. Then I heard her voice. "Burn me, Daniel." I sat bolt upright. I knew I'd imagined her voice, but I had a sudden feeling that I wasn't alone in the room. And then I smelt it. Rotting pineapple. Where are you?" I whispered in the darkness. "You know where I am, Daniel." I just want to go home," I pleaded. "So do I, but I need you to burn me first." There was nothing for it. I knew what I had to do. I got up, got dressed, and drove home. I pulled into the driveway, popped open the trunk, and grabbed a can of spare gasoline I kept for emergencies. I went inside the bedroom and emptied it all over Marla, along with the bottle of Everclear. She didn't move. She just stared at me, looking pleased with herself. Then I went to the kitchen drawer for matches. No way I was getting close enough to use my lighter. I dropped the match, and then the bed burst into flames, turning the whole room into a glowing orange inferno. "Thank you," Marla whispered as she burned. "I'm sorry, Marla," I said. The first time we met, I never choked someone during intercourse before. I didn't mean to do it so hard. I didn't mean to kill you. "I know," Marla whispered as her face melted, and the maggots popped in the flames like overgrown, pus-filled pimples. "I just need one more thing before I can leave you alone, Daniel." Yes, Marla?" I thought I could see the barest trace of a smile steal over Marla's face.